Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into one of the most monumental, high-stakes, and frankly, incredibly compressed geopolitical shifts in modern history. We're looking at the chaotic road to the 1947 Indian independence, drawing straight from Dr. Rahul Sajshifkar's scholarly historical study. We're going to trace that breathtaking sprint from British imperial subjecthood to full sovereign dominion status. We'll get into the intense timeline, the impossible logistics, and of course, the very real human cost of it all. Okay, let's dive into this 180. That is the number of days, just about 6 months. That is all the time it took to completely dismantle 2 centuries of British imperial rule and birth 2 entirely new independent nations. To even begin to understand how such a massive historical transformation was crammed into a mere 180 days, we really have to look at the absolute pressure cooker that was early 1947. Section 1. The clock starts ticking. So picture this. By the close of 1946, the political climate in British India was incredibly tense. The British Cabinet Mission Plan had completely collapsed under the weight of mutual distrust. The country was reeling from severe communal violence and absolute political deadlock. The British realized they had to act, and fast. On February 20, 1947, Prime Minister Clement Attlee made a historic declaration, stating that the British would finally transfer power by a deadline of June 1948. To manage this massive exit, Lord Louis Mountbatten was sent in as the new viceroy. But when he arrived and saw just how volatile things were on the ground, Mountbatten quickly concluded that waiting until June 1948 would just spark wider civil conflict. So he made a shocking decision. He abruptly moved the deadline all the way up to August 15, 1947.
Just 6 months. They originally thought they had about 16 months to figure out a careful exit strategy. Suddenly, they had a mere half year to execute the absolute largest undertaking of partition and independence the world had literally ever seen. The panic and the pressure here were truly unimaginable.
Section 2. The June Partition Plan. This is really the ultimate pivot point. On the evening of June 3, 1947, Mountbatten got on All India Radio to broadcast what we now call the Partition Plan. It proposed dividing British India into 2 independent dominions. And right after that broadcast, the key leaders responded. Jawaharlal Nehru, speaking for the Congress, noted that the united sovereign state so many had hoped for hadn't come off, but they accepted the drawing of the boundary. Why? To do it peacefully, rather than having a massive conflict forced upon them. It was a reluctant but incredibly pragmatic acceptance, just to avoid widespread civil war. And this brilliantly illustrates how coordinated this political sequence had to be. Following Nehru, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, commanding the Muslim League, similarly addressed his followers. He commended the plan to them, signaling an agreement that allowed this massive constitutional shift to actually move forward. Even Winston Churchill, back in London, was urging the League to accept it once Congress was on board. Then there was the Sikh community, who were understandably deeply anxious over the impending, very real division of the Punjab. Yet they too ultimately accepted the plan as the least damaging of the available options. So in less than a fortnight, a rapid, albeit uneasy, consensus was secured across all 3 principal parties. No one was exactly thrilled, but there was this shared, sobering recognition that the only alternative was open-ended chaos. Section 3. The Administrative Scramble. With the political agreement finally in place, the energy completely shifted to a monumental bureaucratic sprint. 5 weeks. That is the impossibly short window given to Sir Cyril Radcliffe to actually draw the new borders for Bengal and Punjab. And what's staggering about this, Radcliffe was a British barrister who had absolutely no prior experience in India. He was appointed precisely because he was presumed to be totally unimpartial. Just imagine being handed a pen, some incomplete census data, and being told to draw lines that will affect millions of lives, all in just 5 weeks. But it wasn't just dividing up the land. A partition council had to split the undivided Indian civil service, the entire armed forces, the vast railway network, and all the currency reserves. Imagine trying to divide your entire household inventory in a week, and now scale that up to an entire subcontinent. They literally had to figure out who got which physical desks, chairs, and paper clips in the government offices. They were attempting to carefully disentangle the entire administrative apparatus of an empire simultaneously, all based on ratios they had agreed upon in a matter of days. It's mind-boggling.
And simultaneously, there was the massive looming issue of the princely states, hundreds of them. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, along with his secretary, V.P. Menon, worked at absolutely breakneck speed. Using this masterful mixture of persuasion and sheer firmness, they successfully secured the accession of almost all these princely states just before British paramountcy officially lapsed. Section 4. A Tryst with Destiny.
We are now entering the final, frantic days of August 1947, and the duality of this moment is just profound. In the Constituent Assembly in New Delhi, the mood was jubilant. It was filled with emotional preparations and historic speeches as the midnight hour approached. But in stark contrast, Mahatma Gandhi wasn't even in Delhi. He chose to remain in Calcutta, embarking on a solemn fast to appeal for communal peace amidst riot-torn streets. He was deeply, deeply pained by the vivisection of the country. Meanwhile, back in Delhi, as the clock ticked toward midnight, the hall fell completely still. Jawaharlal Nehru delivered what would become the absolute most quoted utterance of the entire independence movement. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. It was a legendary, goosebump-inducing speech that defined the exact moment the clock struck 12, and an independent nation was officially born. And immediately following that speech was this really powerful, intimate moment. Hansa Major presented the very first national flag to the Assembly on behalf of the women of India. Right at the stroke of midnight, that tricolor flag was hoisted atop the Council House, officially marking the earliest formal flag hoisting of the new Dominion. Section 5. Triumph and Tragedy. As we shift to the morning of August 15th. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the actual sequence of the very first flag hoistings. At midnight, the flag went up at the Council House, but because of the global time difference, one of the earliest hoistings globally was actually at India House in Canberra, Australia, at 7:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Then, at 10:30 a.m., it went up over the Viceroy's House Dome. Later in the afternoon, there was a massive public hoisting at Prince's Park. You know that famous tradition of the Prime Minister addressing the nation from the Red Fort? It didn't actually start until the next day, August 16th. But we have to look at the somber counterpoint to all those celebrations. The Radcliffe Boundary Award was not actually published until August 17th. That is 2 full days after independence. The British delayed publication to avoid holding up the transfer of power. But the tragic reality of that decision, millions of people literally woke up in a new, independent world completely uncertain of which country they even belonged to, right in the middle of one of the largest and most violent mass migrations in human history.
Which leaves us with a profound question to close today's explainer. Looking back at the sheer, dizzying speed of those 180 days, was this rapid exit a necessary political miracle that averted an even greater civil catastrophe? Or was it a rushed, underprepared retreat that practically guaranteed the tragedies of partition? The luminous triumph of a free capital and the grave, continuing human costs will forever be bound together in history. So what do you think? Thank you so much for exploring this with us today, and I really hope this leaves you eager to dig even deeper into the history.